Welcome to the Rising for Women podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Merlo-Booth, and I believe the world will be changed for women when we change how we walk in it. So each week, we're going to have hard conversations. We're going to explore new options. Some of them are going to be hard options, and we're going to have some real, straight talk. We're going to do that because I have faith that women can handle it. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Rising Podcast for Women. With me today are Dee Marcotte and Arlene Newman, and I'm Lisa Merlo-Booth. Today, we're going to talk about an interesting topic that originally was coined by Terrence Real, misery stabilizers. And misery stabilizers, I'm going to use a definition from a woman named Kathleen Mayman. She states that a misery stabilizer is a behavior or activity that helps us avoid, deny, distract, or move away from pain within ourselves or within our relationship. What a great definition. So misery stabilizers basically are those things that we put into place so that we don't have to be conscious or aware or feel or think about the things that are bringing us down, upsetting us, worrying us, stressing us out, or otherwise are hard to live with.
Basically help us avoid things that are too challenging to tackle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And in a pandemic, that can be many things, right? So misery stabilizers, Terry first coined the term in particular around romantic relationships, right? If you're unhappy in your marriage, if you don't like something your partner's doing, if there's some conflict that you're avoiding, if you're not feeling connected to your spouse, you're going to start, using these misery stabilizers so that you don't have to feel the disconnect or the upset or talk to your partner about sex that you're not having or that you're unhappy with, or talk to your partner about their anger or whatever the issue. But a misery stabilizer can also be for individuals. And we really, right now, we're in a pandemic, and things are locked down, and it's hard to go to gyms where people, often people might do exercise to help themselves, their mental health. They can, go with friends and socialize. They might, go out to eat or go to a bar, or go whatever. And now a lot of those avenues are shut down. So let's talk a little bit about misery stabilizers. And then let's also talk some about how do we know the difference between a misery stabilizer and just relieving boredom for a little bit, or an okay bad habit, but that, isn't really necessarily a misery stabilizer. So we'll jump into all this stuff today, and let's get started. Dee, Arlene, what do you think about misery stabilizers, and what are some examples of them?
They certainly, they stabilize. That's the whole idea. Yeah. It means I don't have to blow anything up. Like whether it's my job or my relationship or something with my kids or my friendship or anything like that. I just, tell myself, oh, I can get through it because of this. And I might not even tell myself consciously, sort of thing. And I have a great, from some years ago, a great example where I had like 5 women for some reason and all at the same time. This is about 10 years ago or so. And they didn't know each other, but individually they had all stopped smoking. And now they all wanted divorces. That was like, I could go outside, I could be out there for a particular time, because it was a way to get away, to avoid, to not talk about it, So I thought that was interesting that once they stopped, they were like, kind of like, I gotta get out of this.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, I think smoking is a great example. I remember I used to smoke in my 20s, and I remember when I stopped. Mm-hmm. And I discovered a whole world within myself that shocked me.
Interesting.
This is how I did it. I said, okay, So I'm going to, I didn't say I'm going to quit smoking. I said, I am just going to try to find out every time I want a cigarette, what it is that I'll be feeling if I don't smoke. And I did it each time. And boy, it opened the whole door to my psychic life.
I love that.
It was fascinating.
That's so funny. Yeah. It keeps us unconscious in some ways. We don't have to feel. I love what you said, Dee, you don't need to blow things up. And I would say you don't need to rock the boat at all, right? And there are endless misery stabilizers. We have the standard misery stabilizers, drinking, and we're not even talking like an alcoholic, like, where you're like getting wasted every night, but it could be you have those 2 glasses of wine, 3 glasses of wine every night, or you've got those, 2 glasses of scotch every night that just kind of numbs you out enough so that you don't have to sit there and feel, oh, I'm so annoyed by my partner, or oh my gosh, she or
How about
he.
feel anything?
Right.
You don't have to feel. You don't even have to be present, because your whole your whole internal psyche is somehow altered.
Yes, it's like
So
a
you're
little
just
numb.
not really a little numb.
A little numb. Now, pot, right? We got people of all ages who are eating.
I'm in Colorado.
Right.
Huge.
Anybody there who's not high?
Yes. They're eating edibles, or they're smoking, or they're having, so that's something. Technology, you can be on your phone. I had
your children. Like I'm going to put all of my attention in the children and none over here.
Yes.
My relationship. So it looks good.
Right.
However, it's out of balance.
Yes.
So I think that's like some of these things we're talking about that it's out of balance.
Out of balance.
Out of balance. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had one client years ago, and her misery stabilizer was knitting. So every time she and her husband were in the room, she was always kind of, focused on knitting. And so she was half hearing and half not really there and not really present, but that's what she was doing. Work can be a misery stabilizer. Really, it can be so many different things. I have to tell you, for me, I had quit food and Diet Coke. Like I have 2 misery stabilizers that through this pandemic are just like popping up. At the end of the day, I'm like, I'm so beat. I'm so looking forward to my Diet Coke, which I had given up. And now it's just like my little blankie, right? It's so kind of sick, but it brings me such joy, that little Diet Coke.
Diet Coke.
That or chips and dip for me is just like, my happy face, and so I don't have to deal with the boredom or and so misery stabilizers can be and so many things. And they bring you joy. They bring it, like, just feels like a right. I don't need to be present. I don't need to think. I'm just going to shut off TV. TV can be one. So
it's so part of our life that it's also very hard to separate out what's normal TV, what's normal drinking, what's normal. Any of these things can be normal. And I think what you said is when it goes out of balance.
Right. So let's talk about that for a moment. So, people all across the world, not just the United States, all across the world are doing a lot of misery stabilizers or they're doing a lot of, they're watching TV or they're, on their phones or whatever. What's the difference between a misery stabilizer, a serious problem, right? And just like a social escape a little bit. So, Arlene, when you say it's out of balance, well, if we lined up 10 people, all 10 of them might say this is out of balance when it's, and somebody else would say, oh no, I think over here is out of balance. So what is out of balance?
Well, I'm thinking about my patients, and I knew we were going to talk about this today, so I was going through all my caseload, and I thought at least 50% of my patients live in a misery stabilizing relationship, if you can even put it that way. And so what I think they do, first of all, work during the pandemic. Almost all of them are working 12-hour days.
Yeah.
And they feel somehow that they have to, and I don't even know that they're aware, but because there's no natural boundary, they just work from morning until night.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one big thing.
Yeah.
The phone.
Yeah.
Looking at their phone, not talking on the phone, looking at the phone, being whatever it is, playing games on the phone. I don't know what they're doing on the phone, but they're on the phone.
But when
Spouse
is
is on the phone.
But when is that, too much? Because everybody's looking at their phone. Everybody's playing games on their phone. Everybody like texting. So when is it too much? What do we think? Like, how can we draw a line for people so that they can, get a better sense of, oh, maybe I should look at this,
Well, I think we could go back to our definition, in terms of if you look at, like you were talking about, Arlene, if I don't do this, then what comes up for me? Because if it's kind of like, oh, well, I can't do that, then it's not like, okay, well, something's there. So taking that out will help you determine, is this just a bad habit because we're all bored right now in a pandemic? Or is this really something, that I'm using so I don't have to think of something I would like to avoid? Yeah. So for instance, I have a client, and this sort of worrying about relationship. So dating and being, decided to go on an app, hadn't been on one, went on an app, and she's kind of like, I have to check it every 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So it was sort of like, it hadn't even been one, but I think that devices like create a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Where now suddenly I have to look and see, did I get a hit? Is anybody talking to me? What's going on, kind of thing. And so, or the idea that I have to keep looking because why isn't that person texting? And so it's a whole other place to take our mind rather than going, what's right here?
So, and I would say, so with that example, it also is like, what, if I have to look to see, did I get a hit? Is somebody looking at me? What are you not looking at? Are you feeling like you don't have enough connection in your life? Are you feeling like your self-esteem, like you don't feel good about yourself and you need that hit, and that's why you're constantly doing that? So, the difference between something that's okay versus it's starting to either be a misery stabilizer or a problem is you're avoiding something. There's something that you don't want to feel or that you don't want to look at, or there's something that it's stopping you from, reaching your potential, creating the best relation you can. It's hurting you and holding you back in some way. And that would be, so that could be like a misery stabilizer. A bad habit is, or a social habit is like, sometimes you can eat an edible, sometimes you can get high, but you're doing it socially with other people. You're just kind of having fun. You're having a drink with other people, but you can stop. You're not having several drinks, right? You're not doing it because this whole day was so hard that now I need this in order to relax and to calm myself. If you're looking for some type of device, habit, or something in order to settle you down, calm you down, chill you out, then now you're using it as a crutch, and you want to start thinking about, why am I using that as a crutch? And what's it keeping me away from?
One of the clues is that feeling of I have to, like you both use that word, like that feeling that like you don't really get a choice, like you're compelled to take this action.
Yeah.
So it's like an addiction. It now has you.
Yeah.
It's taken you over. You no longer are making a choice here. Oh yeah, right now is a good time. Let me sit down here and and have a glass of wine and enjoy my evening. It's not like that. It's like it's like
Yeah, I love that.
You can't settle down. You can't settle down without something.
And well, so that would be a great test too. So if you're wondering if whatever you are doing as a misery stabilizer, remove it for 4 or 5 days and see what happens to you. See what comes up. See, like Arlene was.
Remove it for one day.
Yeah.
When you're smoking, it's like you're smoking all the time. So every time I wanted a cigarette and I didn't do it, I said, oh, gee, God, I am angry. That was like the first thing that came up. Or at parties, I said, oh my God, I'm so anxious. It was fascinating. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
It's a really good journey.
So that's great. So remove it for a day and test and see what it is that's coming up for you and how uncomfortable it is to be without that.
And I think one piece, you were talking about the feelings that came up, and sometimes I think the thoughts might come before that. Because I know, so I too have a food addiction. And I remember when I was trying to do more getting off of sugar, which I've never succeeded at completely, but I was really trying to cut down because that was my misery stabilizer for life. I would sit at a restaurant, and it's like this restaurant, it's been open forever. This wasn't during the pandemic or whatever. And so you could come and get this particular dessert at this restaurant at any time. Okay, like this wasn't a problem. I could go there any time of the day and get it. And when I wouldn't order it after dinner, my thoughts would be like, if you don't get it now, you will never get it. It will never be again. You will never be. Like, oh man, that is so irrational. But it was so compelling.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's the cost? So we do all these, misery stabilizers, as long as it's not like running into an addiction, let's say, like, what's the big deal?
Well, can I go back a minute? Only because, we've talked about some things that are like, yeah, well, those aren't good. But I think that the ones that I notice my clients have more trouble with is working. Working's important. I make more money, da-da-da-da-da. Exercise. Well, it's good to exercise. Blah, 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 blah. So there are these sort of more positive looking things that can be positive, but can also get into the unbalanced place. So I just think we should say something a little bit about that it can look really good.
Yes, it's a good rationalization. It's harder to call it what it is. You can fool yourself into thinking, like the people that I'm thinking who are working so much, in a million years, would they not be aware? They're not aware that they're using it to avoid a lot of other things.
Right. It's that saying, too much of anything, even a good thing, is a bad thing.
That's right.
Right. And when you start, one good indicator that you're a little off is if your loved ones are complaining about it.
Right.
If your loved ones are like, oh, you're working again, like, or can you exercise, like, just instead of 3 hours, can you just do it for 45 minutes or an hour? Or can you exercise when, not right in the middle of the busiest time with the kids, and can you help or whatever? And so you want to really, if they are complaining about whatever it is that you're doing, that's a good sign that you're probably leaning too much. Right? You're in an imbalanced state, and you want to start looking at, why am I doing this and what am I doing?
Yeah, rather than dismissing it as it's their problem, or they're nagging, or they're being controlling.
Right.
Pay attention. If you want to take this journey, right? I think one of the problems is that a lot of people say, well, why not? Really, why not? Like, they're not aware of the cost that we're talking about here.
Right. Well, and for women, like, again, this is a podcast about empowering women. So you can't be empowered if these misery stabilizers are driving your life. because it's keeping you numb, it's keeping you tuned out, and it's keeping you from fixing that miserable relationship, or, you know, making hard choices, or, you know, making a career move or whatever it is, because you're numbing out enough so that you don't have to feel it. And that's going to keep you down. Okay, so what are the costs?
Well, clearly first is you're miserable. Yeah.
Well, you're actually not miserable if you're doing these things.
You're not feeling
You're
miserable.
not feeling
You're not
miserable.
feeling
Are
miserable.
but
Right.
you can compartmentalize it and
Yeah.
not have to think about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you
You
stop
really
doing
think that?
those
I think there's a place though that, like, the misery stabilizer feels good for a bit, but like you can only feel numb while you're in it. So that means the rest of the time you're miserable.
yeah, but there's so many of them. You can go from taking care of your kids
That's
to
true.
watching
Good
TV,
point.
to being very busy, to cleaning the house, right? You can just keep you. I think women have done that their whole lives.
Yes.
Good
Very
point.
busy taking care of house
Mhm.
and family, and not really having to deal with themselves. And I'm thinking about my mother.
Mhm.
You know, she worked and then she came home and then she cooked and she cleaned. Nobody ever helped, including me, because that's what mothers did.
Mhm.
I know she was miserable,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
she never stopped.
So that's very interesting. That makes it tricky. So to Dee's point, what's the cost? You know, you're miserable, but you may not know this may keep that misery. It does keep the misery at bay,
Yes.
which is why we're doing it. Not just women, men do this all the time, right?
Of course they do. We all do it. We all do it.
So it gets tricky. It's like a lot of bad habits. We do things because they feel good in the moment, and they give us something, or we wouldn't be doing them, right? Even if, as much as they may be harmful in the long run, in the short run, they give us something.
Mhm.
So I would say in the long run, one of the consequences here, one of the costs, is that you just never take the time to create the life you want or create the relationship you want. Your relationship just stays in that, you know, kind of deadened or unhappy or, you know, consciously miserable place, but it's not so miserable because you have this prop of, maybe you're going outside and you're having lunch with this cute guy or with this, you know, young girl, and that attention through the flirting is making your marriage, you know, bearable. And so, but in the long run, what happens is you're not dealing with the problems at hand that is leading you to need a misery stabilizer. You know,
As you were talking, I was thinking about that idea of when women come out of long-term relationship and they say, I don't know who I am anymore.
That's right.
I think that's what it sounds like to me. That's the cost, that you keep giving so much away of yourself and avoiding really dealing with whatever the conversation needs to be, that then you don't know who you are.
right. I think another cost is you, to your core, we all know when we're not living up to our potential. We all know when we're kind of like, you know, something like, I'm just not thriving. I'm not, you know, I don't know, life is just whatever. And so one of the costs is you just feel that malaise, that kind of, you know, I'm not thriving. I wish I could be doing this. I wish I would. And you're just not. And so that can be another cost. And then one of the bigger costs, I think, is that many addictions start as misery stabilizers. And then they, you know, build and build and build and build until then they're a full-blown addiction. No addict ever says, my goal in life is to be an addict. That almost everyone across the board is like, oh, you know, I would never be an addict. I'm never going to be an alcoholic. I can control my liquor. I can control my drugs. I can, whatever it is, until they can't. And misery stabilizers, especially the ones where like workaholics, you know, alcoholic, drugs, sex addiction, gambling, all of those can easily go from misery stabilizers into full-on addictions. And it becomes like this gradual thing until it's overcome us.
I'm also trying to think in terms of, like I'm thinking of this relationship with a friend, woman friend, and there was like, it was miserable. It was so miserable. But I would keep doing it. I'm like, it took me 2 years to like end the friendship, you know? And I'm like, what is going on? And what would happen is, so this is that like where it can get kind of complicated, because we would go to dinner and the food was my comfort, while she was being reasonably narcissistic and, you know, talking only about herself and this and that and the other thing. But then I could say, oh, well, that was a good meal. And then I'd go do it again, like 2 or 3 weeks later. And it was so hard because it looked so normal. And yet I knew I hated going to dinner with her. Like when I'd be away, I'd go, no, I have to end this friendship. And then she'd go, let's go to dinner. Okay.
Well, what a great example, because enjoying the moment gets you out of having to fix the friendship or leave the friendship. Right. So, I mean, that can show up in so many different ways. And in a marriage, let's say you guys have this habit of skiing together and you love skiing. Right. And so even though the vacation itself is miserable, when you're on the slopes, it's really fun. And so that's like, oh, but we really like to ski. And so you can, put these props in so that you're not really, it feels like it's good, but you're really not tuning in and looking at. That's an interesting, I like that.
Yeah. Or I had a client who she wasn't that happy with the relationship, but she really liked his parents. They were dating. Yeah. And so it was really hard for her because they would do things like you're saying, they would do things with his family, and she liked the family.
Right. And so you start making more and more things with the family rather than just the two of you. You start doing that, and it becomes a misery stabilizer, because at least when his parents are there, that he's fun or it's nice or whatever. Yeah.
If we talk about relationships, especially long-term relationships, I think the fear of losing the relationship underlies so many of the rationalizations as to why we do all these things, because having to face that this relationship is not helping us thrive, and yet we are so deeply attached. Or we have children and we don't want to break up the family. Then we feel very trapped.
Yeah. So that goes, like you said, why do we do these misery stabilizers? Because there's a lot to lose if you don't. If you really pause and think, am I happy in this marriage? Am I not? There's a lot at stake for that. But if you just keep eating or you keep, drinking, or what women do often is they don't get the emotional connection from their husbands, so they get it from their female friends. And so they go out and they have lunches and they do things and they, get all of their emotional needs met from their women, so they don't have to feel the loneliness in their marriage. Right? That's a huge misery stabilizer. And then, going back to the losses, I mean, why do we do this? And what's kind of the cost, Arlene? If they, with some divorces, if they actually divorce, who gets who? Like, what friends do they get to keep? Because, it's very hard. Like, a lot of the friends are going to go with the husband or their wife, and then, do I want to risk not only losing my marriage, but I also am going to lose, half of my friends anyway because of it. So that, that's tough. But anyway,
so it's interesting. We're talking about losing all these other things, except that with the misery stabilizers, the cost is women lose themselves.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, but my friends are this or that. And it's kind of like, yeah, but you left you
Right.
in doing the misery stabilizer, or not saying what needs to be said, or talking about what needs to happen. And I find that even with bosses, people with their boss, I'm kind of like, well, why don't you just have a conversation, ask for some time, and and we figure out how to word it in terms of money and productivity, but I'm like, have a conversation, and they're like, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
So instead they look at Facebook while they're at work, or
Mhm.
like that.
Okay, so one of the reasons, a lot of the reasons why they're doing misery stabilizers is to not look at it, to not lose a marriage, to not be on their own, to not lose a job, to not, don't ask for a raise because you might not get it and they don't want that disappointment. Even with, there's just so many things that you're avoiding with misery stabilizers. We do it because, we don't want to look at things and it's uncomfortable. And maybe
it's scary. It's scary.
It's scary.
You have to really face very scary things.
Yeah, especially if you're not aware. Like if you're not aware that you're unhappy in your marriage or you're unhappy in your job, it's like, oh shoot, I didn't know I was unhappy. Oh God, now I have to like realize that I'm unhappy, and then I have to look at, oh God, does this mean that this relationship's over, or that it's not gonna be able to change? So it gets, there's a lot of stake here. All right. So, we get why people are doing it. And in a pandemic, other reasons why we do it, you're bored. You're just bored. You don't, you're bored and you need some type of excitement, and, or you're feeling down and you need a little pick me up, right? Or you need an escape. You're just like, you're so overwhelmed, you're so tired, you just want to escape. So a lot of, reasons why. So what can people do about it? We know, lots of reasons why you're doing it. There's lots of things to avoid. It makes total sense. And you're totally human. Listen, you're in a very big ship if you are like using misery stabilizers. It's just that those props aren't helping you. They're kind of, they're holding you back. So what can you do?
Well, you can stop, like what we said before. You can stop and see what happens. You can learn about yourself. Why are you using those things? What are they covering up? So it gives you a chance to reconnect to yourself in a more meaningful, deeper way. So at least you know what you have to deal with. You may choose at this moment during the pandemic, when our choices are so limited, to live with this, but at least you'll be aware. At least there won't be something that you're running away from in yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Just get curious. You're a reporter trying to get the story.
Right.
Just, you don't
Your
have to
own
do
story.
anything. Yeah, you don't have to do anything about it yet. And trust yourself that you are courageous enough and strong enough to at least know what the story is.
And if you decide whatever you decide, that's your decision. But at least it's not, you're not doing it blindfolded.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think doing anything unconscious, not paying attention, is really disempowering. It takes your choices away. When you are just kind of, what's the word? Numbing out without even being aware of why, it really takes all of your power away. You can't do anything about it. And so this way, at least first get aware. Is it an issue? Is it a problem? And what do you think you're avoiding? What do you think's, are you unhappy with? Just get curious with it. All right.
Yeah, and then once you're aware, then all kinds of possibilities may come up for you as to how you can deal with it that you may not have thought of before. You may have thought this is something that we can't do anything about. It may not be true, but if you look at it, then things may open up.
Yeah. I love that. One of the things, like, avoid black or white, all or nothing thinking. right? So if you're aware that, okay, oh, wait, maybe I am unhappy in my relationship, that doesn't mean you're only looking at staying or going, right? Or I'm unhappy in this job, I got to quit, or I've got to, like, there's a myriad of choices. And so really, once you realize what you're doing, just brainstorm. Whether you think you can actually, tackle this issue with this particular solution, don't even worry about it yet. Just brainstorm as many different options as you can to open up your thinking about it.
I loved, there was years and years and years ago, I heard this in some sort of Japanese proverb, that there are a minimum of 17 solutions to every problem.
Love
So
it.
if you're this or that, that's 2.
That's
You got 15 to go.
yes.
And all the space between these two hands, right?
Right. Yes. Like there's a whole bunch in here
Yes.
to think about, to be different about. And, and maybe that's something you can do for yourself. It's also something you could do for a friend.
I was just gonna say that. I was like, if you're like thinking, wait, I can only think of 2, maybe 3, then go talk to a friend and say, you got to help me brainstorm. We need to come up with at least 17.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And get off the just leave or just, that kind of thing. Just like we're just going to be, brainstorming is the idea of you don't get rid of any possible solution, because the idea of creativity helps you find new solutions.
Right.
I think allowing for that creativity, even if it sounds ridiculous,
Right. And so, hey, let's do that. Like, let's just do this for fun.
Okay.
Just to let's say you come up with, you realize I am having 2 drinks, 3 drinks every night because I actually am unhappy in my relationship. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's have the 3 of us riff. So I say, oh my gosh, you guys, I'm unhappy in my relationship, but I like the thought of staying for another 7 years because my kids aren't going to be out of college until, out of high school until 7 years from now, kills me. And then otherwise leaving them right now and divorcing, those are the only 2 options. I feel like I'm stuck. Help me think. So let's just brainstorm. And what we don't want to do is if we think of one, the other person doesn't get to say, oh no, that wouldn't work. Like,
exactly.
just keep going. All right. So help me out, guys. I got 2. Stay or go.
Okay. Let's make a list of all the things in your relationship that you're unhappy about. And then we can figure out what you can do about those things. Maybe you can talk to him about some of these things. Let's find out where the problem is. Is it with you? Is it with him? Is it with the communication between you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I can make a list. I can talk to him. What else?
Don't take, what if you didn't drink, like we were saying, for one night, and see what comes up.
Oh my gosh, guys. I don't know if I can not have my drinks, but okay. So don't drink.
Right.
That would be the first step. Don't drink so you can see what's causing all that misery.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I could set limits.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just thinking I'm leaving, I could set limits. Maybe I could try to be, I've been really mean lately. Maybe I can try to be nicer. Maybe I can stop criticizing and try to be kinder.
Mm-hmm.
But these things would all come up if you stop drinking. You'll start to become more aware of what it is that's not working.
Yeah, but I'm not sure the drinking is the one I'm going to do. But right now I'm just going to brainstorm. I'm not going to commit to any.
Okay, all right.
I see, Arlene, you're going to push me to not drink. I'm not committing to that.
I'm not going to agree on that.
I can't commit to that yet.
I'm backing off. I hear you loud and clear. Okay. For now, the drinking stays. Okay.
Yeah, right. For now, we're staying there. Yeah.
I got 7, guys. I'm never going to come up to 17. Holy cow.
Right. Never say that. Never say
yeah, that's hard, isn't it?
Are you sure it wasn't 70? It was 17, huh? Okay.
I can make a date.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can tell him how I feel. Although I don't know that I really want to do that, because then he just gets defensive and he's just a pain in the butt, but you know, we'll see.
And then they get to talk to him about his defensiveness.
So maybe part is talking with a therapist about how do you bring things up in an effective way? Or do you have an effective conflict?
Talk to a therapist. I don't have the money right now to start with a therapist. Oh, wait, I'm not sorry. I don't want to tell you what I can and can't do. Okay,
Right.
that's an option. Go ahead. Read books. Maybe I could read books.
You could read books. The other thing is, you know, you say I can't afford therapy, but almost every university has a place that has free to $10 therapy a session.
Look up
If they have a you know, a counseling center.
Look up free help. Okay.
So yeah.
I can change my bad moves. Like when we get into a fight, I go ballistic on him. I can stop doing that. Or I shut down and I get quiet so I can stop doing that. I can work my side and stop trying to change him. All right. So that's how we do it. Like literally. And I want you, so this little exercise, when you do it, notice a couple things. Like as a friend, I pushed back with Arlene a little bit. I'm like, I don't know that I'm going to do that. And she was like, oh, she laughed and she's like, okay. So you want to push back if somebody's trying to get you into one particular place, and give them space. Just be like, okay. And then a couple times I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to do that. And I had to catch myself and be like, okay, wait, I'm not, we're just throwing out a list here. I don't have to do anything on this list. The example is get out of your, we just need to
Get out of your box, because we're all living in little boxes.
Yes.
Our thoughts are always going to a very limited way of thinking. And when you talk to somebody else and you open up to anybody else, they're going to share their little box with you, but that's going to expand your box.
Right.
And you're going to have new ideas and new thoughts, and you never know where that's going to lead.
Yeah. So you can use this little exercise with anything. It doesn't, we were talking about misery stabilizers, but also if you just have an issue, a problem that you're stuck on, that you don't know how to move on, talk with a friend and just say, okay, we got to think outside the box. We got to come up with at least a minimum of 17 options here. And we're not judging any until all 17 are on the table. And then we can go through and be like, I don't know about this one. And you got to pick at least 3 that you're willing to, try. Right. And so make sure you choose a friend who's, going to be a good influence, not, oh, well, you should go get high, or, oh, instead of drinking wine, you should drink, whiskey. Like, you want to, or you don't want a friend who's like, you know what, you should have an affair on the side. I think that'll help. Like, you got to really, you're choosing healthy friends here who can have these conversations. And if you don't have answers, look, the internet, one of the positives around the internet, you can look up any problem and there'll be 10 solutions just on the internet that you can write down. But it's really about expand your mind, open up to options. But whenever you have 1 or 2 options, you're stuck. And usually those options are polar opposites. And that's just the beginning. That's just framing it for you. And then you got a lot in the middle. So
I also might say, often to actually change, we don't first off change right in the moment. And so it's the kind of thing that something might happen. You've gone through this opening the box, something happens and you do the same thing you always did. But now you look at it and you go, oh, I could have done this thing here. I could have done that option there. And then you get closer and closer to the actual time of doing it real time.
Yeah, love that.
That's true.
And make sure in any option that you're doing that you have baby steps. Like there's got to be tiny moves that you can make and big moves that you can make, right? And inch by inch will get you there. Don't worry about, how long it takes, as long as each movement is a little bit forward. So
because when you do that, you're freeing yourself. You're coming out of your box, out of your old patterns, out of your child's thinking, and you're developing and you're growing, and that's what's going to help you thrive. It's not just the outcome. That's one piece of it.
Mhm.
But this is really the journey of growth.
Yeah.
And I think the idea that I'm the one who's changing, I'm changing for me, not so that you do something. But if I keep, a lot of times I see women like they try it twice and they go, see, it doesn't work. Look at what they're doing. Or I know what they're going to say or do. And it's kind of like, well, did you ever try it this way? Did you ever do this new thing for a period of time? Well, no. Okay, then you don't know.
Right.
You don't know how you're going to feel. You don't know what they're going to do. You don't know. Yeah. So yes, you know how it goes in the old system. You don't know how it goes if you try something new, but you have to stay consistent with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. It's not one and done.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Sometimes it's 10 times. Sometimes it like you got it. You keep showing up. You keep showing up. And if you show up in a different way than you used to, even if they respond similarly, you're showing up different. So your response is going to be different, which is automatically going to change the game.
Right.
Grounded, powerful strength always, no matter what you're coming into, you are coming in this matter of fact, very confident, very strong, not over the top, not under. And you're just working your side, work your side, work your side. If they don't work theirs, it was a good moment for you, right? No matter what they did, it's still a good moment for you if you showed up with that grounded, powerful strength. If out of these 17 things, you've chose 3 and you're actually trying to implement 3, good for you. Good for you. Okay. What else about misery stabilizers might people be wondering about, questioning? Oh, the other thing with a misery stabilizer is listen to the people around you. If they're complaining, it's likely a problem. It's at least something to be looked at, not something for you to get defensive about or whatever. Arlene had said this earlier, don't dismiss their complaints. So if they're complaining about it, watch it. And if you have ever said to yourself, I need to stop doing this, I do it too much, chances are it's a misery stabilizer. That's a red flag for a misery stabilizer. And if it's something that you've tried to stop, but you can't, that's a red flag for it's possibly more than just a misery stabilizer. Or if others are saying they're worried about you because of something, that means it's another red flag that it's something more so than a misery stabilizer. And now we're looking at possible, addictions that you want to really, take a hard look at. And now here we are in a pandemic, and there's a lot of people drinking more. There's a lot of people, getting high more, doing more drugs. There's a lot of people who are isolating more. So you're in
Working more,
right? You're in a big boat. This is just an MIT. It is a moment in time. Some moment in times are longer than others. This is a longer one, and it is still a moment in time. So no matter, how much you're struggling, please know that this time will come to an end. It will change. Life shifts. It's the one constant in life is change. So as hard as it might be now, it will not always be this way. So, know that, have faith in that, and reach out to people if you need help. And
if you can learn how to use this time to learn more about yourself, more power to you.
More power to you. Love that. There's so many good podcasts that are just, awesome. They're giving a lot of information that will, help. All right. Anything? All right. What's our challenge then? Challenge for women and challenge for men. Always
Be aware, become aware.
Become aware.
Always.
I'm going to call that Arlene's motto. Become aware.
So that's the first part for, absolutely for the women, get conscious, watch, just kind of take a step back and notice, where are your misery stabilizers? And then I love what Arlene said about her smoking, just stop for a day, 2 days. And
stop one cigarette at a time. That's how I did it. One cigarette at a time. Okay, right now I want a cigarette. I'm not going to have it, and see what comes up. You want that drink? You don't even have to not have it. Just don't have it right in this moment. Give
Yeah.
yourself 10 minutes and see what that 10 minutes brings up. It will reveal itself. You will reveal yourself to yourself if you give
I
yourself.
thought it
that.
was funny when I was first working on my food misery stabilizer. I read from this one woman was talking about, like, she would go to the refrigerator, like, just, automatically.
Open,
And
right.
what she would do is she'd close the door and she'd jump so that she had to get in herself
Uh-huh.
and then decide what to do. So you can always see something like that.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Change
like,
your
get
state.
here.
Just stop the habitual
Just for a second.
behavior and see what happens. Something will happen. It'll be different than what you used to. And it'll be
Absolutely.
interesting. It will be so interesting. I found it absolutely fascinating. I had no idea.
I love that. I think that's great. And I would say that the challenge for men, very much the same. Men are doing the same. They're doing
Absolutely.
misery stabilizers as well. And so do the same exact thing. Pause. If you're working too long and you see yourself scheduling that next meeting, or you see yourself, whatever it is that you're doing, stop, pause, and be like, what's behind this? What am I feeling? What's going on? Get curious. Always, always, always starts with curiosity. Don't be afraid to see what you see. Don't be afraid to see what's there. All right, there you go. If you notice, if you have family members or friends who you feel like are really getting into some misery stabilizers or worse, reach out, have a conversation, talk to them with love. And we will all get through this time.
Yes, the moment in time. I love that. That's
Yeah.
absolutely right. We have to keep
Yeah.
that in mind.
Just an MIT. All right, everybody. As with everyone, if you like this, please share it. If you don't, send us, comments where we really want to hear what's helpful, what's not. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you again for joining us this week. And always remember, you have the power to change the world for women by changing how you walk in it. I challenge you to choose one way to stand in your grounded, powerful strength this week and be part of the ripple of change.